think it's interesting. A lot of the approaches towards adopting Zero Trust are being around the adoption of cloud and SaaS tooling. And I think when you find clients that have got kind of a sovereignty concern, you mentioned that kind of geo-national aspect, but understanding that a lot of classifications of data are not supposed to leave their country of origin, their country of generation. And then actually when you start to look at some of these cloud adoption models, I think less so if you just look at standard public cloud and key to developers, but once you get into things like routing, as an example, a lot of those networks and cloud technologies traverse the globe. You don't necessarily know where your data is going at the time. You start to break down that, like what is being processed, where is it being processed, and does that fall under the Patriot Act or some other piece of legislation in less secure? Like, that's got to be a fundamental issue, I think, for a lot of people. And actually getting information about what is being processed where and therefore what legislation might apply to it is not straightforward for an organisation trying to do their due diligence. So obviously there's the extreme end of going, I'll just build and control all of my things. There's build a stable, all there's, I'm sure it'll be fine, no one's going to ask. The other end of the spectrum, like how do you work out your risk appetite of where on the spectrum you fall? How do you really go about addressing sovereignty?
So I think this is perhaps a challenge within the Zero Trust marketplace. If you look at a lot of the tools that are available to deliver Zero Trust network access, which is the area that we at Appgate are particularly concerned with. A lot of these tools, Zero Trust as a concept has largely come to fruition because of cloud adoption, because the network as a perimeter that you can control has largely dissolved. So a lot of these tools have been designed as cloud deliverable environments, and possibly for I pluck a number out of the air, 70% of small, medium-sized enterprises, that's absolutely fine. And I think issues of data sovereignty don't really concern them beyond things like GDPR and all the rest of it, but they have back-to-back agreements with their providers and they trust that they are in place. When you come into Johnny's world and you're looking at different protected markings and you're looking at literal sovereign-owned data, and protectively marked data that has to be handled in very specific ways, it makes it harder to use a cloud-rooted service to deliver the principles of Zero Trust and maintain the codes connections that you need to have in place. And totally outside of this world for about 7 years now. I don't know if the manual of protected security is still a thing, but all those sort of rules and the PNN code of connection, all those sort of stuff that you need to meet. If you can't guarantee where the data is residing. Now, that's not a showstopper for a cloud service, for sure, but it is certainly something that you need to challenge your cloud-delivered ZTNA or Zero Trust solution as to where is this data residing, what controls do you have in place, are you approved to carry data at the impact level that we will be using. You need to, if you take in a cloud service, you need to think of it as any other product really, that you need to just verify those things. Ideally, and most organizations have a hybrid environment, right? So you have some things in cloud, you have some things on-prem, you have some things you consume as a service, and they might move around. So you might have stuff on-prem this year that you'll migrate into the cloud next year. And ideally, you will have one solution that can support all those different endpoints. So the enforcement point will be on-prem for the on-prem stuff. It will be in the cloud for your SaaS and your cloud hosted stuff. And from an end user perspective, you really shouldn't have to worry about it. That's for us to worry about. And as you migrate things from on-prem into the cloud or vice versa, the routing should just happen, right? So it should just pick up and users should not see any difference to the service. One final thought, and this is actually an issue we have with the government customer in Southeast Asia. Their network is absolutely not connected to the public internet at all, but they still implement the principles of Zero Trust within that network, because the principle of Zero Trust is you trust no network, not even your own, right? So how do you do that through cloud? You simply can't.
Johnny, thoughts on preservation of sovereignty in the Zero Trust and Triangle model?
I mean, from a Met perspective, and sovereignty is a huge thing for us. Gentleman says to my right, that bit where you've got diverse routing, and we're always worried about, I've got some capability in the UK, and then it's got to follow the Sun regime, this processing outside of that, and then you've got to do like data privacy, DPIAs. And I think a lot of these providers provide these, without naming them, they can provide all kind of CTA kind of based products. But for us, because again, going back to that kind of classification thing, yes, I've got some SaaS. I've got my own presence in, one of the major suppliers in the UK. I've got data at secret. It's really sensitive. So, I want something absolutely, that's kind of UK based. So we'll do everything on insurance. We'll look at where the routing routes are. Where's your point of presence you're popping out from? One day you're in Manchester, then next week in Munich. Well, I never really knew that. So that changes everything that we get. For us, it's a big game changer. It kind of constrains what we can look at. Which in a way is a blessing. Some people would probably say, you get all these other players, and you mentioned, that I think it's NIST 800-207, which is the one that came out.
Catchy name.
Yeah. I don't know how I remembered that, but that was, I'm sure that it was Biden in 2021 said, you can all follow this, when we've got FedRAMP and all that, so I'm sure, our friends over the river would be thinking the same thing, we're not going to have any services going out in Europe or other places, or routing out through other countries. So I think for us, it's something to really kind of consider.